Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. This is the subscriber Sunday video where subscribers send in photos that I include at the end of the video. They're at the end of the video. Before that, I have some photos from the city of Raleigh did a sunflower, 5 acres of sunflowers planted at Dorothea Dix Park in the city of Raleigh. I went over and took some photos of that last weekend. So I have those before, like I say, before the subscriber photos. If you're interested in sending in photos for this video, I typically do these every other Sunday. This is the email address right here to send those photos to, and I'll get them included in an upcoming video. I think thanks to everyone for participating in that. In the last subscriber Sunday, I asked people to post questions that I would answer in this one. So I have 6 or 7 questions here I want to run through real quick. I get a lot of watering questions. Somebody asked about watering established trees. Somebody asked about watering newly planted trees, some Catawba crepe myrtles. Watering questions are probably 50% of all the questions I get, and it's the one, unfortunately, it's like the one question that really can't be answered. It's the I can tell you how to plant in your soil type. I can tell you how to differentiate things. I can tell you how to pick plants for sun or shade. I can tell you all of these details, but the one thing that I cannot teach, and no one should be even claim they can teach, is watering in your specific conditions, because I don't know your soil type. I don't know if your plants are properly placed in the sun or the shade. I don't know the temperatures in your area. I don't know what time of year, I mean, on and on and on. I can give you all these reasons. I reevaluate watering at my garden center and when we had the nursery and in my yard every day. Conditions change every day. I'm in the eastern part of the country. We typically get more rainfall. It's very dry this year. So the answer to your question about watering established trees, I have not watered any of these trees that have been in the ground for any length of time in my yard, that have been in the ground for more than 10 years. I haven't watered at all, but I have done a lot of planting this year, so they're getting some secondary watering from me watering. I think if it ever popped in my mind, should I water my established trees, I'd probably go water them, just to make sure. If it got to that point where it just popped in my brain, I probably would go and water them, but I rarely ever do it. In terms of something that's newly planted, if you're having to water a plant every single day, that it's wilting every single day, I would use my pruning technique on it. That Catawba crepe myrtle question. If you're trying to enjoy the flowers at the expense of the plant being stressed every single day, I'd take those flowers off. I think the long term, the plant will be better off. But I hate to give a weird answer to that watering question, but that's the one thing I don't think anybody could ever teach you. It's something you're going to have to, that's the one part of gardening that you're going to have to learn by trial and error, by overwatering a few things and underwatering a few things. I tend to drought stress things just from my experience. From doing this for a long period of time, most of the time, you can recover from having things abnormally dry and let it, they'll tell you, they'll wilt, they'll lose some interior foliage, they won't flower as well, that kind of thing. And those things you can recover from. You really can't recover from drowning things because it rots the roots. And once you've rotted the roots, then it can't put water up into the top of the plant anymore. It actually dies from a lack of water because there's no roots to bring water up into the plant. So that's what happens when we overwater. So anyway, probably not a helpful answer to a lot of people, but it is the absolute truth. It's the one thing that I don't think I'll ever be able to teach well. But I am doing more watering this year than I've probably ever done in this yard. It is super dry in the south, in my part of North Carolina. I hope other people are getting some rain, but for whatever reason, this is not a good rainfall year, and I'm planting like crazy. So you can imagine that I am watering more than I normally do. Somebody asked about when is the last date to prune azaleas to make sure that you get flowers for the next year. I always said that Memorial Day is really the date that I'd like to have them done. So that was back in, toward the end of May. You could probably go until the 4th of July, which we're after right now, and be okay if so you'd have some factors in that if you waited that late. As dry as it is and as much heat stress as they have, they may not be able to put on some growth. I think you'd need weather on your side if you waited until the 4th of July in order to get that new growth and have flower buds set. So Memorial Day. Okay, the next one was nutsedge. It's a weed that if you guys haven't had before, it's a nasty little weed, spreads by rhizome and from seed. Typically needs wet soil, and so be real careful with your watering. If I had a nutsedge problem, I would either spray it or pull it. Pulling it sometimes is not completely effective because it leaves a little bit under the ground and it tries to come back up, but it takes energy for that plant to continue to do that. So eventually you do win by pulling it, but it can take a few rounds of pulling it to get it done. I would switch, like if it was at my vegetable garden, I'd probably put a layer of pine bark mulch, not hardwood mulch, not pine straw, but pine bark mulch, if that's available to you. Pine bark stays very dry. And if you put a several inch layer of pine bark on the top, it will prevent weed seeds from germinating that fall into it. But it won't have any impact on the roots of your plants below it. So if I had a nut sedge problem in my yard, I would probably in that area switch to pine bark mulch if it's available to you. And obviously in the meantime, you're gonna have to pull what you have or spray what you have. That's your, that's your two options. Okay, so somebody asked me about pruning conifers. I've put up several videos actually about pruning things as I'm planting them in the summertime, just to relieve a little bit of stress on the plant and reduce the amount of water that the plant is using. And if we were talking about conifers, little Christmas tree shaped things, then yes, I would do a small amount of shearing on them. I have to also say on this summer pruning thing to be careful not to be pruning too much this time of year, because new growth has covered up the interior foliage and has been shading it. And if you take a lot of that foliage off, so you want to barely take anything off of it, and that would reduce the amount of water it's using. If you take too much off, it will allow sun to reach material that the sun's not been on all season. So think about the way my skin works. You stay inside during the winter and you come out and go to the beach the first time and you get absolutely sunburned. You really, really badly the first time out because your sun is just not acclimated to it, or some space that never gets a lot of sun on it that you expose to the sun. It burns really quickly. That same thing will happen on plants, so be careful. Yes, I would prune anything as I'm planting it to relieve heat stress, but only take all you need to do is stop the new growth. That's all. So somebody asked about having deformed flowers on their calla lilies. If I was guessing, and that's what it is a guess, calla lily tubers are treated with gibberellic acid to reduce the amount of dormancy. Calla lilies the tubers have to go through a long dormancy before they come back up. And the nursery industry has figured out a way to get them to come up quickly. If you treat them with the wrong amount, I know it can cause some deformed flowers and deformed foliage and that kind of thing. So that'd be my guess, is maybe a few of the tubers as they were doing their thing got too high of a rate of the gibberellic acid, and that's the reason why. But it's a pretty interesting thing that they do to make sure that they have calla lilies blooming at Easter and certain times of the year. They have a way to wake them up and then know the exact amount of time to do every single step to make sure that they're available on holidays and that kind of thing. Kind of interesting. Somebody asked about pricing on plants, about throwing out how much this job or that job in my yard or video that I'm doing cost. Pricing on plants is wildly different. If you live in the Gulf Coast, around the Gulf, those folks have 10 months a year to grow plants, and their pricing is way less than folks that are growing plants in the Northeast, or possibly even Canada or Michigan, the big nursery industry in Michigan. And they have to go through so much winter protection, and winter protection is one of the biggest costs per plant, for plants. If you're in a place where you have to cram them all together, put plastic on houses, cover them additionally, maybe even heat, all those kind of factors. So pricing is just all over the place. And I can drive 4 hours north and probably see the prices on plants go up 50%, and 4 hours south and see them go down 50%. I mean, it's that much of a difference growing in one part of the country to the other. That's why I don't even talk about it, because it's going to be very, very different across the whole country. And then somebody asked about dodder, which is a nasty, nasty parasitic weed that germinates and then attaches to a host plant. If you're not familiar with this is a nasty, nasty thing. When the garden center I used to work at when I was a teenager, we would see it and those plants were gone, immediately gone, because we didn't want it to spread around. I assume it came from the soil, the bag of soil you got, or the actual plants that you got. If I had it, I would probably dump them and be done with it. It's a nasty parasite. I know that the farms in California have big problems with this. They have to go through and pull out massive amounts of tomato plants every year because this stuff comes up. It has just a few days to attach to a host plant because it can't actually root in on its own. So it comes up, looks for a host plant. If not, it dies, and new seeds come up everywhere. And really nasty parasitic weed. It cost the farm industry across the country lots and lots of money. If I ever saw it in my yard, I'd probably go into panic mode and throw that whole area away, assuming I brought it in from somewhere else, because I definitely don't want it in my yard. Okay, thank you very much for watching this video. Here's some of the sunflower photos and the subscriber Sunday photos. Thanks for watching.